If there's anything that I learned from my conversation with Pete McGregor today, it is that he will outwork you. He will outtrain you. He has bad days, just like anybody else, but he'll work his ass off. And no matter what ability you have and what disability he has, he'll prove that he has what it takes to make your life on the mat a living hell. And in the best way possible. Because if we're going to show up to a day, it's up to us to show up with that extra 1%, with that attitude that tomorrow is not guaranteed. So how are you going to show up? So I hope that you enjoy this episode and check out Pete McGregor on Instagram, give him a Google, and share this episode with a friend. Welcome to the Lifestyle Chase, Season 2. This podcast features high performers who have found a way to live their best life while balancing their health, wellness, friends, and family. I'm your host, Chris Little. Let's get started. The Lifestyle Chase is brought to you by Yeg Fitness. Yeg Fitness is Edmonton, Alberta, Canada's healthy lifestyle community, creating and supporting active living for all. Check them out online at yegfitness.ca and on social media at Yeg Fitness. Welcome to episode 90 of the Lifestyle Chase. I am joined by the one and only Pete McGregor. Did I get your name right?
You did, definitely.
Woohoo! So, what was today like for you? Like, it's nice and sunny outside. What did you get up to?
Actually, not much. I've been home from San Diego for about. Actually, I just got home from Hawaii on Christmas Eve. I was there watching a teammate defend her title for Bellator. But before that, I'd only been home for about maybe 10 days from San Diego from the last competition training that I've been doing. So for me, when I'm back in Edmonton and I'm here and especially when it's the winter, I'm sitting at home and I'm resting my body and I'm trying to, take care of the things that I neglect when I'm gone, so.
That's awesome. As far as like Hawaii goes, what's your favorite part about Hawaii? Like I have a Hawaii tattoo on my arm. I love it there. I've only been there like 3 times, but it's just such a neat place to be.
Yeah, I've only been there once, and it was for 5 days. I really only got 4 days to myself, but they were pretty much all packed up with media events and the weigh-ins and, making sure I'm meeting, my coaches and stuff like that for dinner. So the best part to me was after the fight event where my teammate invited us to her family's residence, and we actually really got a glimpse of Hawaiian culture and her family life and there was lots of music and food and it was just a great experience. So I would say the people for sure.
I love it. So for someone who doesn't know who you are in the present now, your day to day, like describe yourself in about 30 seconds.
I am a disabled jiu-jitsu. I do jiu-jitsu. I have a disability. I'm a paraplegic. Very high paralysis. I only have control of about a third of my body. But I spend 6 months of my year in San Diego training jiu-jitsu, and the other time is spent competing and traveling to other destinations around the world, specifically like London, Greece. Where else am I going? There's just too many to name, to be honest with you. I was in Norway, Sweden. I've trained pretty much in a lot of places in Europe and all over America. So most of my time in the last 3 years has been devoted to jiu-jitsu.
So, as far as your involvement with jiu-jitsu goes, like what inspired you to go to your first class or your first lesson?
I think the thing that really put me over the hump was I was sitting in my hospital bed. It was probably the 40th plus surgery I'd had in over a 10-year period. And I was listening to this podcast consistently, the Church of What's Happening Now. It's a guy named Joey Diaz. And, most people would listen to this podcast and not exactly find motivation to do much but laugh. But he was over 400 pounds at one time and started training jiu-jitsu, and was just talking about the health benefits of it. And I'd already had a deep connection to the podcast, Joe Rogan podcast, and his best friend is Eddie Bravo, who is now the master of the system that I train. So it's a very kind of like it's a weird place to find the motivation, but through these people, through these friends that have connected in the podcast world, they kind of made my world a lot smaller. By encouraging me to get out there and try jiu-jitsu.
I love it. So as far as like, because your experience with jujitsu would be different from a lot of other people's experience with jujitsu. Did you have anybody that kind of inspired you that was kind of going through the same disability?
Definitely not. It took me probably over a year to find somebody that had the same disability as me training. There were other people out there with other disabilities to look up to for sure. Especially in the wrestling community, I found a guy named Anthony Robles real late. But if you're into combat sports, particularly grappling, definitely check out a guy named Anthony Robles. He's a monster, and he wrestled in Div 1 in America with one leg. So and then won all sorts of championships.
What's your biggest obstacle? What did any coach ever like turn you down for giving you any kind of training, or was it pretty easy? Did you find it easy to get into the sport?
Although I've heard some horror stories in my journey thus far, I've been doing jiu-jitsu consistently over the last 6 years. I personally haven't had any of those stories. What has happened to me though is I've definitely outgrown one place and had to move on to another place. There's weird things that happen in the jiu-jitsu world that I don't think you're aware of when you first get into it. And depending on your involvement, whether you're a hobbyist or somebody that wants to take a more competitive approach, sometimes your trajectory ends up being very different than where you started. So, unfortunately though, jiu-jitsu is like still a bit of a new sport, which lets it sit in the old world sometimes. And there's a little bit of politics that comes with old people, as you know. So the old ways are dying, which is good, and the ability to cross train and be more open to go to other gyms is out there. But there's still a mentality where we want to keep our secrets, and our team is our team, and your team is your team, and I just don't think that helps anybody in the community.
Absolutely. So with keeping a daily routine or whatever it is, keeping some consistency to the process, there's going to be days, like everybody has their days when they're just not feeling it. They're not feeling the motivation. For yourself, like, and your process, what are the things that you have to do to stay motivated to train regularly?
Um, I know that I have to do definitely what's in my power, the things I can control, I have to be very vigilant about. So, feeding myself correctly, getting the appropriate amount of sleep, recovering, allowing my body to recover. But I'll tell you with great honesty that I don't always check those boxes, and sometimes I suffer as a consequence. Um, but I'll tell you this. I'm actually I was kind of scared to do this podcast because to be honest with you, I'm probably at one of the lowest points of my journey. But I actually welcome these moments in my life now because I've been here before. I've been in the low streak, and I wait for these moments sometimes because I know that the climb is going to be so good. And whatever else is beyond this is just going to be so much better. So I've gotten a little bit practiced in the art of kind of allowing the bad to kind of wash over me and sit with it for a minute, just realizing that there's so much good to come, and my life is really great, and I really at the end of the day have nothing to be down for. But we all get here. We all go through these things, and we all find lack of motivation with our journey. And I just say that welcome these moments, know that you've been struggling and going through tough times before, and you've triumphed, and this will just be another one of those things.
I totally agree, and you nailed it. And this is the podcast to be on for those times because it's honestly like the whole inspiration to telling people's stories and to not like beat around the bush with like these moments of feeling struggle or feeling beat down, like that's what is powerful for other people that listen. Like somebody that's inspired by your story, they're gonna listen to it and they're gonna understand like you're fighting in the trenches too. Like it's if somebody is struggling, it's not just them. It's like people that they look up to. It's people in positions of influence. It's people who are the leaders. It's people who it's anybody. Like everybody has their times, and if we talk through it, it makes us more resilient. Versus if we just avoid the topic altogether, then we're worried that we're the only one.
Exactly. And I think something that's really helped me being around people that are highly successful all the time, doing these things at a very high level is seeing them go through these things and having them be honest with me about, their trials. And you know, I find sometimes I find motivation in the worst places, and that's the thing I try to remember the most, is that some of the worst moments of my life have brought me the biggest inspiration. I like, for instance, in jiu-jitsu, I had been dealing with so many medical problems over a 10-year period, and had so many surgeries that I honestly had resided to a life of, being miserable and lying in a bed and, just not being able to do anything because of the injuries that I had. But, out of that dark place came this beautiful thing, and here I am riding this wave 6 years later. So, as down as I feel, the last little bit, I know there's an upswing coming, and I can't wait for it. So.
I completely agree, and I think like this time of year attributes to things too. Like it's a time where like daylight is limited. Holidays are a sensitive time for a lot of different people for a variety of different reasons. And it's just, yeah, like life kicks you in the ass, and then a few months later, you could be feeling totally, totally different. And it's about just kind of like riding that wave and getting through it all.
Yeah.
So your story is it's pretty inspiring, but we've barely like dove into it. And I guess I just want to know more about the origin as to like how life kicked you in the ass. Like you're living with this disability, you've had all these different surgeries. What caused it initially?
So when I was 8 years old, I was in a multi-vehicle collision. It was a six-vehicle collision where my car was kind of ping-ponged around, and I ended up getting smashed at the end of it between a fire hydrant and a three-quarter ton truck. So we were in an '84 Honda Civic, and if you can imagine, that car getting beat up quite a bit. It was a shell of itself, and me and my parents took the most damage out of it. My dad took some severe damage to his legs. Is still able to walk though, but I broke my back in the process. And during the whole thing, I actually should have had a very much lower paralysis than I do have. They have medical interventions now where they actually, like, if, for instance, if a football player gets a spinal cord injury on the field, they immediately rush him into the back and they put him in pre-hypothermia. So they have these interventions now that they know will help spinal cord injury people getting worse injuries, but they didn't have that intervention at the time. So something that was a very low break for me ended up being a very high paralysis. So for all those people with anatomy backgrounds out there, my break is at L23, lumbar 2-3, and my paralysis is up at thoracic 7.
Wow.
So that's just about an inch above my belly button, maybe about an inch and a half above my belly button, down. I have no control over, no feeling over. So.
Do you remember like what life was like before that shitty day?
Yeah, the usual, the kids playing. I was active in sports, especially soccer, and yeah, just a normal childhood. I was a kid that played hockey in the wintertime and played soccer in the summertime. So it was just a normal, regular upbringing on the north side of Edmonton.
Yeah. What were the five biggest things that had to change in your mindset? Just like how you approach situations, how you looked at life, how you went to school, things like that.
Okay, so I tell this story this way: is I got the kind of the rush job treatment or the easy way out mentally. Because I think as a kid, you're so resilient that you don't think about these things. You don't think that you're going to have to change your mindset, or you don't know what your world looks like yet. So how do you know how it will change over a course of time from the moment you're in a chair to being in a wheelchair? So I think 8 years old, between 6 and 9 probably is a sweet spot for people to go through something very traumatic like that, because it's not necessarily life changing in the way that they know their whole life is going to be altered in the future, but they get a glimpse of it very early on, and they notice, oh, like life isn't going to be the same here, But as a kid, I never really thought about it, to be honest with you. You don't think about these things in those terms when you're a kid. So I think I was just resilient enough that I just thought, hey, this is my life now.
What did you stay active? What did you end up doing in the first like few years or whatever?
So my parents got me immediately into sport. I tried sledge hockey for a while, and I didn't connect with that, but I ended up playing wheelchair basketball at a very, very high level for a long time. I played right up until I was about 24, and I was scouted by college teams, NWBA teams. But I, was more interested in girls at the time, and didn't take those opportunities, pardon me, when I had them. Uh, but about 24, 25 is when my medical problems started. So, over the course of about an 11, 12-year period, I had some major, major, major surgeries that altered, the course of my life. And I wasn't active for quite a long time. And then, something happened to me in my life where, it made me realize that I needed to do some growing up. So when I was 31 or 32, I decided to go back to post-secondary school, and get a degree and try to enter the workforce in a way that was going to be, conducive to my medical situation and my lifestyle. But I soon found that, working in, the profession that I'd chosen just definitely was going to burn me out real quick. So, I was lucky to find jiu-jitsu, or unlucky to find it late, but also lucky to find it when I did, at about, I think I was 34. Um, so, it was just a weird, fortunate series of events, the kind of, or unfortunate series of events that led me to a fortunate position, and eventually just put me on the doorstep of jiu-jitsu. So.
That's awesome, and it kind of gives me a lot to work with as far as questions go. I like that you had your process or your period of time playing basketball, and I found that coaches can be a pretty influential person in a person's life. Would you share that opinion, or like did your coaches leave you with something a different way to lead your life, or did you find that it was kind of like it didn't really matter, you were just playing the sport, just putting in the time?
No, I definitely had some really influential coaches, some very strong personalities as coaches. People that I remember being super influential, but also, as in every situation, people let you down as well. So, and in a team sports setting, I thought I always connected with team sports in a certain way because, I was, even like politically, I guess my leanings are always about, what's best for the group, but in a team sport setting, I think you're more apt to go through some trials and tribulations that you don't expect, and you think that people have got your back the whole time. But I definitely had some positive influences in my life, especially later in my basketball career. And I for sure thank those people for giving me, for all that positivity, for sure. Especially a guy named Steve Bach. Steve Bach, locally in Edmonton here, is known as one of the better, guys who's been involved with wheelchair basketball on this side of the world. So I definitely give him a lot of credit.
What are some things that you really look up to about Steve?
He's a straightforward guy. Steve, the best memory I have of Steve is we were losing a game in a quarterfinal of, I think it was the 2003 Canada Games, and we should have been beating this team handily. And I just remember the team talk that came from him, because usually Steve was the guy that, like, he was the stern guy, but he wasn't getting too up or too down. He would tell you you're playing like shit if that's what you needed to hear. He would pat you on the back if he thought that's what you needed to hear. But I just remember getting in this room and he gave the most rager of a pep talk, just calling people out and throwing chairs, and very like expected, or just something that you just out of left field for a coach like him. But that we all definitely needed to hear that, and we obviously came out in the second half and destroyed that team. So if I would give him credit for anything, it was just being able to say the right thing at the right time.
So, having had that experience and having it be such a pivotal thing for you in that game, if you switched places with him and you were still on that team, but then second version of you was the coach of that team, would you give the same pep talk, or would you give a different
Oh
pep
yeah.
talk? Same thing?
Oh yeah. Same thing. Same. We all needed to be called out in such a way that he did it. And like, no joke, there were like two people crying in that room. Like, it was there was like, we were in a classroom in a school, which was where the event was taking place, and he was tossing desks and throwing books, and like, he was just overturning the room. And I think he just wanted everybody to like take that same fire that he displayed in that room out with them. So that most definitely, yeah, like, even if I could have turned it up another two or three notches, I would have done that for sure.
That's awesome. Can you think of like two other moments in your life where you needed nothing more than another pep talk just like that?
uh well, I could definitely remember one that happened very recently. I decided to do Worlds in 2017. It's the most prestigious jiu-jitsu event, able-bodied it's an able-bodied event. Disabled people do take part in it, but it's the most prestigious no-gi grappling event in jiu-jitsu. And I went there with a teammate, a mentor, who I thought was going to be around to help me out, but ended up disappearing on me, which kind of left me really, really weary of the day. But one of my instructors from San Diego came up, and I didn't even know he was there, and he hung out with me for the day. His name is PJ Barch, and he's one of the most higher level guys in our system right now. But he just walked around and talked with me all day. And I don't know if he knew that I needed it, but him just treating me as a friend and talking to me about jiu-jitsu, and giving me insight into people that were having matches that day. It was just something I really needed in the moment to take my mind off of it. So again, like, coaches for me have always been able to say that right thing at the right time. The ones that have given me the most influence. So at that moment, being scared, being on that big stage, being around all those people, people that you've looked up to for years, you've seen, only on TV, in big matches, and now you're sharing the mats with them. It was just a really cool moment to be able to sit in like a quiet comfort with one of your coaches and have him just talk to you about jiu-jitsu. So.
What goes through your head? What's the self-talk before you're gonna have a competition? Like, what do you have to tell yourself to make it happen, and what's the bad shit that you have to fight off? Like, everybody has negative self-talk. What
Yeah.
happens with your negative self-talk, and what kind of positive stuff do you have to override that with?
Um, well, I think my self-talk usually comes from a place where the people that I'm matching up against are always of a higher ability than me. So my negative self-talk would probably be mostly along the lines of, I'm about to get my ass kicked here. I don't deserve to be here, and all these kind of things. I go through that um, less and less and less as the more I compete. But I remember at the very beginning, these feelings were strong, but I just offset them by knowing how difficult my training process is. I put myself through, and that was something that I found when I did my world's match. I was so frightened for that, not frightened, but the fear was heightened in me, in that match, just because I hadn't been on that stage, and I thought that, I might have, taken a moment to not necessarily represent my team well, or that would embarrass my coach, and all of these things. And I ended up getting out there in that match, and I survived the whole time. I lost the match on points, but I noticed that every training session I'd ever had before that was harder than the match itself. So, and something I remember all the time is that I've trained hard, and I do take my training very seriously. So when I have them, even just recently, I had a match in Long Beach, and I took like a 9-week training camp, like a fighter does. And I went out to San Diego. I lived that lifestyle, trained 4 or 5 times a day, 5 days a week, once on Saturday, once on Sunday. And I'm really like putting myself through as much hell as possible so that when I get to the 5, 6, 7, 8 minute match that I'm about to do, it really is, no sweat off my back.
I like that, and it's a cool way to see it because so many people are up against different odds. Like you don't necessarily always have the odds in your favor, but then you're able to reflect on the amount of work that you put in. And a lot of people put in a lot of work. They get into this match or this obstacle that they face, and they forget how much work they put in. They're just talking shit to themselves and forgetting
Mm-hmm.
like they're ready for this. They prepared for this. What kind of advice would you have for someone that's kind of approaching a new challenge and you know that they put in the work, but it doesn't matter. They're still talking shit.
You know, um, that's the toughest part for me mentally, to be honest with you. The mental game is hard for me to advise people about just because I struggle with it so much myself. I mean, you really hit on the thing that I talk to myself about the most. Like, I am so confident in the fact that nobody, like, I'm really in the top 5% of people who train as heavy as I do, with legs or not. So I know in my heart when I get out on the mat that there's not many people that will stand in front of me that have ever trained as much as I do. Some people don't even train half as much as I do and are twice as competitive as me. So, we each have our own ways of dealing with our mental state. But if you want to be true to your journey and everything that you're doing, just put in as much work as possible and then just live with the consequences of the results of that.
Absolutely. When it comes down to like you went into school again kind of later on, and there's going to be people that are that there's nothing that's holding them back other than the fact that they think that they're too old to go back to school. What was that process like for you? Like did you make that excuse, or were you like, oh whatever, we're doing this, let's go?
Yeah, I go through these things in my head of course, like I deal with this mental battle all the time, but I'm also one of these people that I just decide to do something and then I just do it, which is like, the whole thing about jujitsu. It wasn't necessarily like there was a culmination of many factors, but the biggest factor of anything that I do is I just decide that I'm doing this. It doesn't matter how good I do it, or I'm gonna do it till I take it to its limit. You know, so rightly or wrongly, I immerse myself completely, maybe obsessively sometimes, but I feel like that's how to get good quickly at something, especially when you start it late. You know.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's just the whole like just focus on what you want to do, put in the work and do it. Like quit coming up with excuses. Like sometimes people have to think really hard to come up with all these excuses for like the physical things they're going to do or the mental things that they're going to do. But like the people that are successful at something set themselves apart because they just woke up, said, "I'm going to do this," and then they did it.
So like let me just share with you about the last 6 years, okay? And I hate like pointing my finger at people and telling them what to do, but this is particularly what I've done and I've seen results from. I don't have cable. I don't watch every single Netflix show that comes out. You ask me about a show that you watch on Netflix. The Witcher. You ever heard of that one? That's the brand new one that I've never heard of it. I've never seen it. People have to point these things out to me. Like I used to watch the big four, NFL, NBA, all that stuff. I even watched the EPL, the SPL. I was a massive sports fiend. I couldn't tell you one thing about it today. I choose to use every single waking moment of my life to do jujitsu. Now, whether that's reading about it, watching it on TV, studying film, studying my own film, talking to my coaches, breaking it down with teammates. Like I literally have made everything in my life about jujitsu. Even to the point where the things that don't involve jujitsu. So, my eating habits. I like to eat in a certain schedule because my training regime is such that in San Diego, I only have time to eat here. So, when I come back to Edmonton and people are like, what is your problem, dude? Like, why are you eating a little bit here and a little bit there and the schedule's here and you do this and you don't need to do these things? And I'm like, yeah, no, I do. Like, I need to set myself up for, continued positivity in what I'm doing. So maybe if I'm only here for 3 weeks, I'm not going to shut that off just because I have downtime. I'm going to try to do as much as possible to set myself up to be consistently, rolling and taking part in everything jujitsu wise. So like you really want to get good at something. If you find something that you love and you're really into it and you want to get great at it right away, but you don't know how, let me tell you, shut your Netflix down, get rid of your TV, stop spending time on your computer. If you're going to use your phone, use it for the thing that you love. If you're going to use your computer, use it for the thing that you love. Saturate your life with whatever it is. And some people will be like, but then, you don't have time for other things in your life. Well, there'll be time. If you choose to do something and do it greatly, these are the things that you have to sacrifice for them. Now, I'm at the point in my life where I've saturated my life with jujitsu and I'm starting to go the other way. I want to incorporate more things. I want to travel less for jujitsu and more for enjoyment, but I've done 6 years of it. I've attained a ranking in jujitsu I'm proud of. And I don't really need to push myself like I did before. So I take the opportunity now to enrich my life in other ways, hopefully going forward in 2020. But I'm still immersed, deeply, deeply, deeply in jujitsu, no matter what.
I'm really glad that you talked about that because it's like I can relate with that. I canceled my cable a couple years ago. You got to pay to play. If you want to be really good at something, you have to like immerse yourself. Like with podcasts, like I put out a high volume of podcasts. I talk to a lot of people because that's the only way to become a better host and to learn more and to actually pick up what people are throwing down. And it's yeah. So hopefully somebody has their light bulb moment from hearing that. Like if you want to be good at something, you got to do it a lot.
All the time.
So going into 2020, what's your approach on New Year's? Are you like someone who makes resolutions? Do you get all hyped up, or do you just want to grind it out and stay consistent?
Um, I am going to have a little bit of a different trajectory going forward. I think my jiu-jitsu life is going to look a lot different next year. I've decided to buy into a new gym that's opening. My team is expanding into the southern states, out east, and they're opening a gym out there. So going forward, I'm looking at being owner, operator, teacher, instructor of a new gym here, which will mean I'll be probably out in San Diego quite a bit less. But that'll still be my main training home. But no, like again, what I just touched on there is that there's there's a delicate balance sometimes with life. It's not just about obsessing over one thing, and I realize that. But you know, I don't think I could have gotten as good as I did in the time that I have if if I didn't do what I did the way I did it. And now I've noticed that my life has been suffering a little bit. As far as like small things. Connections I have with friends are being lost, and although I'm picking up connections as I go, these people have been in my life for some time, and when I get back, these things are hard to deal with sometimes. So yeah, I think 2020 for me is going to be one of a new direction of jiu-jitsu, and hopefully it'll be a lot more reintroducing enjoyment and social activity, rather than just traveling all the time for jiu-jitsu. So
Absolutely. When it comes to like I kind of am of the belief that when you're sort of choosing your tribe or your people that surround you, you're gonna be more effective or more successful if you're sort of choosing people that sort of have the same core values. So for yourself, if you had to define your core values, what would they be?
whew, um, core values, damn. um, Honesty goes a long way with me. um, I'm not always I've been struggling in the past to articulate myself in ways that people connect to. Because always the content of my message comes from honesty, but sometimes it comes across, in many different ways that people don't connect to, brash, arrogant, angry, you know, any ways that people um, mentally can't connect with the message that I'm trying to send. It actually hurts me now. I've been trying to change that quite a bit, but I feel that for me, I find no higher value than honesty. Um, and uh, like respect for one another as well. Respect for your fellow human beings, and the people around you, not and for yourself as well. So, if I was just to pick a few, those would definitely be the ones that I would lean on for sure.
And those are really good ones, and like they're important. We can't take them for granted because like in all of our communication that we have with the people in our lives, like it's good to have honesty and transparency and to really
Mhm.
understand that you're on the same page, and if you're not, to be able to like lean into it and get on that same page.
And honesty without judgment is important. We are seldom in a place where we're necessarily listening to listen. Sometimes we're doing the listening to reply a thing, and I feel like that this has been something that I've dealt with in my own life that I'm not always good at, and I'm not always giving to people. But I feel like honesty without judgment is something that needs to definitely be more practiced for sure.
I love it. In the year 2019, what's a moment where you felt the most joy, where you felt the happiest?
Uh, I'm probably one of the biggest ones was when I got my purple belt in October. Um, I've been working towards that, for pretty much, I guess, the beginning of my jiu-jitsu journey. But I mean, I got my blue belt under the 10 planet system last year. Sorry, 2 years ago, July 2017. So over the past 2 years, it's been a real big goal of mine to attain this rank. Um, Not many of your listeners would know, but the washout rate at blue belt is almost 80% in jiu-jitsu. So a lot of people get their blue belt and they dip. So you know, to get a purple belt from your instructor, first of all, means that he doesn't think you're going to quit. So that was an amazing moment for me to have my coach give me that blessing, and really allow me to represent his team in a like a very high level now. More. more is expected of me, I know. It comes with a lot of pressure. But at the same time, you know, I put in so much work, and bled and sweat and cried and, on that mat. And, you know, I, that moment for me, I just remember was just, it was like relief. It was
Yeah.
like the most happiest relief, So,
So you talked about like that whole rate of people just kind of like mailing it in. Were there
mhm.
moments that you saw that the majority of people were doing that you thought, why not you do that too? Or like how did you press forward to get that next step?
So the week before my world's match that I'd spoken about earlier in the podcast, I almost quit. Um, I'd been training for 12 weeks for that specific match. So I trained for 11 weeks up to that date. And it was the last training. So you train and then you take the week off. Um, so that was the last night of my training session. I got back to the hotel and I was staying with a friend of mine. And I just started crying, just like uncontrollably, not sobbing or weeping, but just crying. And my friend's like, "Yo, what's wrong? What's up?" And I was like, what is the point of all this? Like, I have a massive scab on my chin where people have been trying to choke me, for 11 weeks, and my body feels broken and my mind is just shattered. And my main training partner is a 17-year-old kid because he's the guy that's in my weight class, and he's beating the F out of me nonstop for 11 weeks. And I'm getting to the gym and I'm hoping he's not there. Like, that's how bad I'm getting beat up, And I was like, what's the point of all this? But I get to the match, like I stated previously, and I'm in the middle of the match thinking, is this it? Like, is this all that it is? And I, I got off the mat and I remembered right away that week before where I'd just broken down and I was ready to pack it all in. But that's just all the negativity, that's all that's left over in your mind that has to grasp onto you to try to get you to quit. That's all that's left in there, and that was that, little piece of me just talking negative and not letting me get over it and not letting me realize of the 11 weeks of torture I've just put myself through to prepare for this. Um, so yeah, I think I'm a little off track with where we started here, but yeah, I mean, uh, I definitely wish I would have kept these things in mind when I thought about quitting, or I'd been in that place. So yeah, I mean, I've dealt with it before, and I've dealt with it on a very large scale before a very like important tournament, and still managed to just be able to take pride in the fact that I'm in a tough training room with people who are putting me through, the best possible torture to prepare me for the worst possible event.
That's awesome. Do you find when it comes to moments like that moment before the match, or like the week before, is it your own things that you're saying to yourself that gets you out of that rut, or is it somebody else that gets you through it?
I think it's a combination of both. I think I've been here enough times that I'm aware of, like, when you like, I don't know if you've done any combat sports training, but you see people enough over a week and you get to realize what they're going to throw at you. Well, myself the same. I'm ready for all the hooks and jabs that I'm going to throw myself mentally now, before the competition. So I'm a bit more ready for it. But I think it has to be a combination of both. I really think if you're dealing with these things in a way that you're not successful with, definitely reach out to people. Because we've all been there. We've all been there before, especially people that have been doing what you're doing for longer than what you've been doing. So definitely reach out to people, but also have the innate ability to know, you're going to go through these things, and to have some sort of coping mechanisms to deal with it, even if it's just training harder.
Yeah, I love it. So you travel to a lot of places. What are three places that stand out to you, like that are memorable, that taught you something, or that it's just your favorite place to be?
Well, I do really like San Diego. I connect with that city not just because it's my training home, but I really enjoy the vibe there, the food, the people. Um, it's not exactly like LA, um, where there's like a hustle and bustle and the traffic's crazy and the people are weird. San Diego, everybody's weirdness is cool, if that makes sense. Um, but uh, but San Diego would definitely be one of them. Um, I connected deeply to my homeland in Glasgow. I was born in Glasgow and came to Canada to grow up when I was very young. My parents took me and my brother back consistently, so we always got like a bit of a dual upbringing. But just recently, I was able to go back there and connect with it in a way that I hadn't before. So my homeland always, holds a deep place in my heart for sure. But The place that I've had fun in the most, the place that I want to go back, I spent one night in Paris, one whole day in Paris, I should say. Um, and I decided not to do any Ubers. I got up at 5:30 in the morning. Um, I decided to wheel, like I stayed at a hotel near the Eiffel Tower. I wheeled to the Eiffel Tower in the morning, and then I wheeled up the hill to the Arc de Triomphe, and then I wheeled all the way back down the hill to the Louvre, and I must have done about 14 miles that day. All the way around Napoleon's tomb and all the museums that were there. And I got lost in parks and met people, and drank wine with random people playing soccer, and it was just that to me it connected this realization that I have been not traveling for enjoyment, and there's so much more out there to see and do in the moment of traveling, and not having to like plan my day or or have set times and things to do. Now I've been very motivated in my travels just to land somewhere and not have a plan and just let the action take me wherever it goes.
Well, I think that's an important takeaway for anybody because we get so wrapped up on like knowing what to expect, and we forget to sort of like take in that moment that is right there, right now.
Definitely, definitely.
So my next question for you might be a tough question, but I'm gonna ask it nonetheless. What's the stupidest thing that anybody has ever said to you regarding you living with a disability?
um, you know, I'll go ahead and say this. I used to be a real champion for people in wheelchairs. And by champion, I meant I made other people feel miserable about being stupid in front of disabled people. And I don't think that that's always the way to connect to people, to try to, bring them into an understanding of, what makes us comfortable and what doesn't make us comfortable. Um, I'm always hearing people's intent first. That's what I'm listening for. So if you're being stupid because you're ignorant, you know, um, like I feel that that's like you don't know what you don't know. So how can I hold you responsible for that? But if you're being deliberately, cheeky or stupid, that's a whole different thing to me. Um, but I'm not going to go out of my way to make people feel bad because they make me feel bad, you know, especially if they don't mean it. You know what I mean? But I get people that ask me if I can walk, from airlines and things like that, and they're just doing their job. But clearly, I have bags strapped all over my chair, and if I would have been able to walk, I would have kind of walked up here, I think, and I get a lot of stupid questions flying, but it's only because these people have boxes to check, and if I got upset at every one of those people, man, that would be a tough day.
Oh,
So
for
I just
sure.
I just kind of laugh it off, and And some people even realize, they're like, that was stupid, wasn't it? And I'm like, yeah, like you got a job to do, so.
Well, it's
But
it's a great thing to talk about because it's like, yeah, you don't know what you don't know. And even just like scheduling this podcast recording, I was like, well, shit. I was telling myself, don't say anything stupid. Like, I live in a condo that's 3 floors up and there's no elevator, and I was like, shit. What do I do? What do I do? And it's like
mm, mm,
just little things that we encounter, and it's crazy. But at the same time, the more equipped and resilient and understanding, and the better of a listener you are, like you approach it with the right mindset. Whereas a lot of people are going to like start to take jabs because somebody said something that was maybe a little bit insensitive. But if they don't know, they don't know.
and like snarkiness gets you nowhere. You don't get that person to be on your side if you're being snarky with them. So, and to me, like if you've said something that I perceive to be stupid, but isn't mean or threatening me in any way, chances are I'm not even going to correct you. You know what I mean? That's the person that I am.
Yeah,
But again, if you're going out of your way to say something, that's hurtful or mean to me, I'm fully prepared to be that asshole, back. So
totally. You gotta have your own back when you need to.
for sure.
So my next question for you is, when it comes to like how you show up in the world, like it kind of in a way it sort of like manifests outcomes. So like how going into this new decade, this new year, how do you want to show up in the world every day? What are like some things that are just going to be consistent for you?
Well, to take that out of it would be the perfect thing for me going forward into the next year. I don't want it to be about a year. I don't want it to be about a date on a calendar. I'm just going to be consistent over, every single day. Like we are not promised tomorrow. All I can deal with is today. I can set myself up for a future of tomorrow, but to worry about it, or to stress about it, to be anxious about it, to try to control it, it doesn't make sense to me. I've been reading a guy named Alan Watts lately, listening to a little bit of Alan Watts. He's a English philosopher, author, um, intellect, but he talks about if you knew your future and you could control it, that's actually already a lived past. Like, what are you doing, stressing or being anxious or trying to control the future? You're taking time out of the knowing and the enjoying of today. Even if your moment in the today isn't that great, you just know that tomorrow is another opportunity to do shit over again. So um, that's the hardest part for me is always the mental game. It's always remembering that there's another tomorrow to make shit better than it was today. So, you know, trying to be consistent, that 1% extra every day is just the best you can do. And try not to, have it set on a marker or a calendar or a date. Just try to do it every day, you know?
That's perfect. If you could like sit down and have coffee with one person in the world, like even if they've already left this world, like who would it be?
Mm, I actually just had this conversation recently, and I couldn't come up with one. But who who would it be? Um, I think it would probably be somebody, you know, somebody who's changed the world for humanity in some way. Um, I was really big into reading Malcolm X when I was 14 or 15. Wasn't everybody's cup of tea back then, but I found connection with him in this idea of by any means necessary. Um, so I would probably look to sit with a public figure who changed humanity. Like Malcolm X, like Martin Luther King. Um, Somebody like that who's just influenced change on a really positive level throughout the world, and just ask them what their deal is, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good person to probably sit down with. So I have a
Mm.
question that I ask every one of my guests, and then I compile it and I put some Coldplay in the background, and it sounds really nice. But anyways, if you were to give one piece of advice on how to live your life to the fullest in the most true to you way, what would that piece of advice be?
All right. I would definitely say live unapologetically. Do everything in your life that brings you happiness and never apologize once for it. Please don't hurt people along the way. Don't hurt yourself along the way. Try to make all the right choices as far as it relates to your health and well-being, and the health and well-being of people around you. But at the end of the day, you have one life to live, and if you're not doing it happy, you're doing it wrong.
That's awesome. I love that. So that basically wraps it up. Thanks for joining me today.
No worries, man. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode, and I'm just going to give you a final spoiler for a new project coming out in January. If you've been listening to some of the recent episodes, I've talked about a daily podcast, and I'm proud to announce that it is completely free. It is derived on conversations and questions that just come up to me day to day. It's going to be about 12 minutes long every single day. It's going to be real talk by the Lifestyle Chase. Coming soon, January 1st, 2020. Stay tuned. Welcome to Real Talk by the Lifestyle Chase. This is a daily, community-supported, 12-minute podcast that complements the Lifestyle Chase while targeting specific topics each day. Let's begin.